Hello, and welcome to the September edition of Michigan Gardener. I have here something called a garden hod, H-O-D, that our friends Randy and Kay made for us for the series, and it arrived just in time because I have some tomatillos that are ready to be harvested. The Latin name for tomatillo is Physalis Ixocarpa, or Physalis philadelphica, depending on which source you quote. Physalis means bladder, and you can see that each of these comes in like a little husk. So this one's ready to be harvested. It's started to yellow and turn brown, and it splits, and you can see it's enclosed the fruit in a little husk. Now, as it turns out, this one has some sort of a pest that's bored into it, so I am going to chuck this. We'll find another one here. Here's one that's nice and full. Typically what happens with these is once they're ripe, they'll fall to the ground, and you want to get them, if they fall to the ground, you want to pick them up pretty quick, otherwise you can end up with animals eating them and pests getting them and things like that. The tomatillo is a relative of the tomato, which is a relative of nightshade, which is a relative of potatoes and peppers and eggplants. And all of those plants contain a certain amount of a toxin called solanine. It's thought that if you harvest these before they're fully ready, you'll end up getting poisoning if you eat too many of them. So we'll just eat a few. I didn't get a huge amount of tomatillos, but that's okay. I'm going to can these, and I'll probably have to buy some tomatillos from the grocery store to chuck in with these. The next time we harvest these, I think we'll get a lot more because there's a lot of things that are just about ready on that plant, but it'd be a shame to pick them too early. To can tomatillos, it's a good idea to just drop them in some boiling water for a little bit before you put them in the jar. And in the jar, if you do it in a quart, you put a half a teaspoon of citric acid in there, pack your tomatillos in, and then fill with water. And that needs to be boiled for 45 minutes for a quart and 40 minutes for a pint. There's just not enough acidity anymore in tomatillos or in tomatoes to just be able to can them straight. You have to put some acid in there or you'll get botulism and die.
All right, so we're gonna make another circle garden, and this is how you create a perfect circle using string. All right.
Walk out to where you want it.
What do you think, like here?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So I'm just gonna start at one end, being careful to not spray plants.
I'm gonna get a little closer, I think. What are you doing?
All right, so using an edging tool, I'm going to go around the line that we have painted. All right, now you're going to use just any kind of a shovel that works well for you to kind of chip off the whole layer of grass now that you've made the edge. Okay, so we're not going to waste this turf. This bed runs downhill. We're wanting to build up the back a little bit, and if you stack this, it will turn into loam over the winter. All right, so we have all of the turf dug out, and now it's time to put the hardscape in, which in this case is our little miniature frog pond. A really good reason to introduce water into your garden is that it will attract insects and frogs and pollinators and birds and all kinds of wildlife to your garden that can be beneficial in a variety of ways. First of all, it adds interest, but second of all, when you have problems with things like slugs, for instance, the frogs that are attracted to the water will eat the slugs. And it's amazing how much better the rest of your plants will do if you have a small water feature. We're going to dig this one in most of the way, but not all of the way. We are going to create a little berm and use some of the excess dirt that we take out to build up around the top that will be sticking out. This will help things like frogs have a little beach to be able to enter and exit the water feature easily.
Oh, this soil is ass.
This soil is kind of full of clay, so having a pickaxe and a strong gardener partner is a huge plus.
Lots of rock.
There's quite a bit of rock buried in here. For whatever reason, there's lots of rock in this part of Michigan.
This end needs to come down a bit.
Okay.
Oop. Well, let's, we might have to pack a little stuff around it. Once I get this level. There, it's level this way. It's level that way.
Okay.
So let's pack some dirt around to keep it in position real quick.
Okay, so now what we need to do is create some levels to put our plants in. And you kind of follow the same principles that you would any other planting. The taller stuff is going to kind of go toward the back, etc., etc. This is the time of year where water plants are kind of getting hard to find in our area of Michigan. So we're going to do some temporary things. Kyle's got some good ideas.
Why am I putting these in here?
He's putting these sticks in so that frogs and other insects have a way in and out of the water that's easy, and it gives them some cover and something that they can move around on. Okay, so once we fill this with water about once a week, we're going to have to overflow it, and so we have placed this little cutout part so that it's at the back and the water will naturally run out that part, and we've mounted some rocks to prevent erosion from the soil that we mounted. All right, so we're ready to fill this with water. It's not going to hold water and be perfectly watertight for a little while because it has been sitting empty, but the wood will swell and it will become watertight. So the first week or so, you're going to have to add more water here and there. This will eventually be watertight all the way around, but you can see that right now the barrel is still leaky and we're getting some spillage. So we have a little placeholder plant. This is a Chinese pitcher plant. It's carnivorous and it loves wet feet. We'll bring this in the winter, but for now, we're just going to stick this into the pond. Okay, we have a little gem to put in. This is a Japanese maple. These are meant to be kind of a focal point. This is probably a between $300 and $400 tree, and we've rescued it from just a very lonely spot in a corner that nobody would ever walk by. It was planted by itself, surrounded in river rock. It was looking very sad, and now it's going to be the belle of the ball. All right, so we're going to mix up some soil to plant the Japanese maple in. This is tree and shrub compost, and they do like a free draining soil. So we're going to mix about 50% grit in with it so that it doesn't get waterlogged.
More grit. Not too much of that stuff. Yeah, pour it on in there.
Well, stick it in there. That looks,
Like that?
actually, that looks great.
All right. Oh yeah.
I think that's going to be nice.
Okay, move this. Or yeah, now put some, pack some of that around there.
Okay, so we're going to add some mycorrhizae to the hole itself. This is going to help the tree establish into its new hole.
And around the roots.
You put it around the roots of the tree, just helps it acclimatize.
That's good.
This tree may have been moved in just the nick of time. We've discovered that whoever planted this tree used zip ties to tie it into the support, and this lower zip tie is girdling the tree. Okay, so we want to give it a little bit of water. We'll give it some more later, but let's give it a little drink. Okay, so now we're going to create the illusion that our water feature, our pond, is actually running into a little stream that trickles down the back and disappears into the woods. We're using white bellflower, blue periwinkle, and then as we get those planted in, we have some taller varieties that are also going to hint at water. Okay, so this is the final periwinkle. These have about an 18-inch spread. They're going to be about 8 to 12 inches tall. We'll put a rock near the white bellflowers, as rocks would naturally cause a little whitewater rapid, and this is going to be nice when it's done.
This tomato plant has a disease. You can see the leaves. The rest of them are healthy. So I'm going to take all of the tomatoes off of there and pull that plant out and chuck it straight in the garbage so that the rest of them don't get it. Everything else is pretty healthy. So the thing to do is to just pull the whole plant out of the ground. I took off the tomatoes. The red ones I'll probably turn into sauce. The green ones are going to be made into something called piccalilli. All right. This morning we turned the green tomatoes into piccalilli and canned all of that up. We have a quick job to do, and that's to plant these Paw Paw trees. The scientific name for a Paw Paw tree is Asimina, and no laughing in the back there, we're all adults, Asimina triloba. The first word is not Latin. It comes from a Native American word that I don't know the meaning of, and the second word is triloba, which is like a tri-cornered hat from Revolutionary War times. And that's because in the spring, when this leafs out, if it's a mature enough tree, it'll also get flowers, and the flowers are shaped 3 petals like this, and then 3 petals the other way. This tree will grow up to 30 feet high, and the spacing for these trees is 15 feet apart. And you want to plant at least 2, because if you don't, you won't get fruit, because one tree needs to pollinate the other and vice versa. So to do this, we'll move our wheelbarrow a little bit. We're going to want a hole that's as deep as the tree is, so it looks like not quite as deep as a shovel, but twice as wide as the pot. And the idea is not to have the roots grow down, but to grow out. So we want it wider than it is deep. So we'll get started with that. So we've got one hole dug, and I've got some Mike brand, mycorrhizae, which helps the tree kind of get used to its new home and integrate with the soil a little better. The soil in this back part of the yard is actually way better than the rest of the soil throughout the rest of the yard, so I may have to do some stuff back here. So there's our roots. I'm just going to kind of rough them a little bit. There's supposed to be a taproot, but this just looks like a big ball of roots. We have an extra little volunteer tree there. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And to use this, we're just going to open it, get rid of these glasses. It's hot out here, sweaty. All right, so I'm just going to put it all around the root ball here, like so, and chuck a little bit into the hole. And I'll do the same to the other tree, which is right over there, and then I'll show you the magic mixture of soil that we're going to use. This is a composting soil that's meant for trees and shrubs by Morgan Composting, and this is a Michigan company, and it's got triple ground bark and poultry duty and cow duty and all kinds of other really good stuff in there that's really good for establishing trees. So I'm going to add a bag of this to our wheelbarrow. And the next thing I'm going to add is 5/16 inch grit, and I'm going to mix it. Oh, it's probably 50-50, but I'm going to do a bag of this and a bag of that. Paw Paw trees like really well-drained soil. You also like full sun, which this is the fullest sun part of the yard besides the vegetable garden. And they also need a little shelter from wind, and so we're kind of in this sheltered area, but yet it still gets full sun, so that's why we chose to plant it here. And we'll give that a good mixing. Actually, I might add a little bit more of that. We'll see how it looks. All right, so I'm going to hold this upright, and we'll have our assistant shovel in the dirt. You'll notice I pounded a stake in here, and that's because one of the main dangers to this tree as a young tree is going to be deer rubbing their antlers on it. This discourages them, and I'm going to do one more thing to help prevent those pesky varmints from getting in here and wrecking my tree. Another antler protection device is this thing right here, and you'll see in a minute we're going to measure how tall it needs to be. This needs to come off because that was just growing back into the tree anyway. So there we are, and this is just a little plastic tube that you put there. And I think the combination of the pole and this will discourage young bucks. See? Like so. All right, and the next thing to do is to give these good watering. You want this to get all the way down to the bottom of the hole. This is a 2-gallon pot, and I'll use that whole 2 gallons on here. And then we'll apply some mulch to help with water retention and weed prevention, at least around the base of this. Well, that's that job done. 2 Paw Paw trees, 15 feet apart, dug in, mulched, protected from deer. So what is Paw Paw fruit like? Well, These trees are from the family called Annonaceae, which is a largely tropical plant species, but this one happens to grow a little bit north. It's the largest fruit native to America. They get about this big, and when you cut them open, there's black seeds in there, and it's described as kind of a custardy banana type flavor. In fact, other names for this tree besides Paw Paw are Hoosier banana or Indiana banana. There's all kinds of names, but it reminds people of a banana. I've never eaten the fruit, and the chances are you will never see it in a store, and that's because when they ripen, if they get overripe, they'll ferment. So they don't have any kind of shelf life, and the only way to transport them to any place is to take and freeze them. There are some experiments going on right now of how to just take the pulp and ship that, but that might prove difficult. The bark, leaves, and stems of this tree contain a poison that's poisonous to all insects except for one, like butterfly, weird butterfly thing. And the caterpillars from that butterfly will feed on the leaves, but not in great enough numbers to ever damage the tree. It's extremely insect resistant because of that poison. Well, the poison's also in the seeds, so when you're cutting it open, if you accidentally cut into that seed, you can disperse some of that poison into the fruit. So, bottom line, if you want to eat this, you got to grow it. So I'm here with my bestest friend Molly, and she's from Traverse City, and she's a huge fan of the show. And tonight she came down with the family, and we're gonna eat some really good food, Peruvian food, and we're also gonna do an ensalada caprese. And she has in her hands a variety called Old German. Look at the coloration on that sucker. And you're not even getting started yet. To date, this is my favorite tomato that I've had in the garden, and she's going to show you why. She's going to slice it in half. Look at that. Spread them two halves up there. Oh my God, look at those. Look at how attractive that is. Now, so this tomato works better as slices. But since we're making an ensalada caprese, she's going to cut it up in irregular shapes, and we are going to, oh, what do you think?
Holy crap, yeah, I see why. That's amazing.
Honest opinion though, don't lie.
It's so much sweeter than I thought it was going to be.
Is it?
Really good, and it's almost got a little citrus to it.
Right. I think it's the perfect balance. What do you think?
That's excellent. Like I said, it almost has a little citrus note.
Yeah, so
really good.
So this is an heirloom tomato, and it's a very balanced profile. It's got the sweet, it's got the sour, and this is Old German, and this is one of the ones that I bought to replace one of the bad ones. Well, one of the ones that died in my garden that I started from seed. Anyway, we're gonna eat it. You guys just sit tight.
Well, here we are at the front door, and I have a planter that I planted up, and I'm not really liking how things went. In principle, you want a pillar, a thriller, and a spiller. So a pillar, a thriller, and a spiller. And this thriller is not thrilling. It's kind of the same color as everything else, so I think I'm going to change it up a little bit. So I got some dragon wing begonias, which are an all-around great plant. They will grow even in almost zero sunlight, and they will grow also in full sun. I wanted something a little bit brighter to contrast with the dark sweet potato vine.
I decided these trees would look a lot better and be more attractive for a while if we did something around them. So what I did was I put a 9-foot perfect square between the two trees, and I'm standing at the exact center of it. And then did 2.5 foot radius circles around each tree so that it intersects with the square. And I staked everything out, checked everything. I'm actually kind of pleased with the geometry. And so now we're going to dig out the turf, and then I'll explain kind of goals with the planting here. We cut the circles of the geometry out and the edges around the center square. And now it's time to plant these circles. So what we're going to do with these is put lavender in here. And we have 4 lavender plants per tree. We'll probably have to add more depending on how much these spread, but I kind of want like just a bunch of lavender underneath the thing. You might be thinking, well, why don't you just divide those and then spread it out? Well, see, the thing is lavender is a woody shrub, and you can't divide it or you'll kill it. And we definitely didn't find that out until after we divided one. But lavender is everybody knows what it smells like. It's a really pretty smell. It's very common. You find it, you can walk through the grocery store and find 1,500 different products that have lavender in it. Scientific name is Lavandula angustifolia. And this is basically English lavender. It's the most common cultivar grown. And it does well in this climate. It likes poor soil, well-draining soil, and that's exactly what we've got here. This is pretty sandy, crappy soil, and these should just love it. As far as uses for it, well, it smells good, and it attracts pollinators, so like lots of bees and such will come out here, and if we get some flowers on the Paw Paw trees eventually, maybe they'll swing up there and fertilize our trees as well. It's supposed to be like a sleep aid. Like if you take a sprig of it and put it under your pillow, you'll like sleep better. And I don't know if any of that's true. I know that like people do all kinds of hippie shit with it, like make soaps and candles and whatnot, but I'm not really into that. Once we get this center square dug out, I'm going to do a couple different kinds of wildflowers in here. The first one I'm going to try, I don't know if it'll work, but I'm going to try it, is Texas bluebonnets. That's a lupine type of flower, and lupines do grow in Michigan just fine, and actually we have a native lupine, but I kind of want that bright blue of a Texas bluebonnet, and plus I grew up just loving those flowers because I was a kid in Texas for a while. The other thing I'm going to put in here, I know grows here, absolutely positively, because it's native here, but it shouldn't be native here, and that's Indian paintbrush. And it's supposed to grow in the west. It likes poor soil, it likes a lot of sun, which I think it'll get here. It's very drought tolerant, so all of this is really drought tolerant, with maybe the exception of the trees. So minimal attention would have to be paid. I don't understand why Indian paintbrush is native here, because it really shouldn't be, but it is. So that will work for sure. The blue bonnets may or may not work. And as it gets closer to time to planting it, I'll film a segment on that and talk all about those plants. Our basil out here is coming to the end of its life cycle, and I'm not done eating basil for the year. So, did you hear that? That's a tree frog. We'll see if he does it again. I'm not done eating basil for the year, so when I was at the grocery store, I saw that they had these for like $1. That's probably going to be really crowded because there's a lot of little plants in there. But I think I can get this to grow, and what I'll do is I'll thin this out so that there's only a few strong plants left, and each one of these will go in a pot, and I'll show you that. Basil comes from the Latin word basilis, meaning kingly plant, and pretty much everybody knows what basil is and what it tastes like and stuff like that, so I really don't need to go too in detail on that. They do like a moist but well-draining soil. So this is just regular topsoil that I've mixed with grit to help in its drainage. And if you see, this is a little bit of a trick. We can figure out exactly how much soil we need by doing this. And then we'll pluck this out of here, pull it out of its container, good root system, pluck it right down in there, and it's good to go. And I'll come back and tonight, because we're having another Ensalada caprese, take out some of these smaller stems and use those. For in front of the garage here, it really does kind of look kind of blank. We don't have a lot of options for planting here, so I bought this stone urn, and I'm gonna do a little fall planting. You can get these little discs that fit down in there so that it reduces the amount of soil you have to put in there if you're actually planting into soil, but I'm not. Instead, I have this massive specimen of chrysanthemums. So chrysanthemums are commonly known as mums, and it's a flower and plant that's native to Asia, like Eastern Asia and kind of northeastern Europe. And the word chrysanthemum comes from ancient Greek. It's a combination of two words, chrysos meaning gold and anthemon meaning flower. And you can see we have some like little yellow flowers here. And this is actually a tricolor, so as the season progresses here, we'll get orange and pink and some other stuff in there. Well, sadly, that's about all. We're out of time for the September edition. There may be a kind of mid-September update. We'll see what goes on. Between now and October, I'm mainly going to be focused on canning. We've got the 20 tomato plants. I've already got 20 quarts of sauce put up, and lots more to come. We've also been cleaning out the woods in the back. And that progresses, but it's really nothing you would get a whole lot out of watching. So we may see you in 2 weeks, or we may have to wait till October. A lot of stuff to do before it freezes to get ready for next year. Bye.